And welcome back. And as promised on this Saturday, again, very glad that you guys are with us. Thank you very, very much. And as promised, we go to Philip Wegman. He is the White House correspondent for Real Clear Politics, and he's with us right now on the Newsmaker line. Philip, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me, Pat.
So now you, and I did not know this ahead of time. In fact, I saw you on a video somewhere where you were being interviewed by somebody and you were both standing up, and I could tell that the debate had not yet happened yet. So I'm not sure who you talked to. When you're talking to somebody else besides Pat Miller, I just don't pay attention. But
Fair enough.
but you were there talking. So you were actually in Philadelphia, correct?
That's right. I was in Philadelphia because this is, in all likelihood, going to be the first and final debate between former President Trump and Vice President Harris. This was a moment you couldn't miss.
Okay, let me ask you this real quick, because you said it very well could be the first and final debate between these two. Was it simply because Harris and her team thought she knocked it out of the park that she came out swinging and saying, okay, Donald, let's go. One more debate. Let's go. And then Trump kind of backed away from it. Does that put her in a better light, he in a worse light, or do you think it's just simply a draw?
Well, there's a little bit of gamesmanship going on here. First, Donald Trump was right when he said to Sean Hannity after that debate that if you're a prize fighter and you lose, well, you ask for another fight. But if you win, you walk away and call it a day.
Right.
And that's sort of the general rule when it comes to debates. During the primary, Donald Trump was way ahead of his competition, and so he was of the opinion, why should I debate? It's only going to hurt me.
Right.
And he basically walked away from that contest. He never debated anyone else in the primary. Now in the general, he debated President Biden, and clearly he won.
Right.
But against Harris, it was a much closer contest. And frankly, at times, it seemed like she got the better of him. In fact, quite often, she got the better of him because she laid traps that he barreled into. And so he walked off that debate stage and said that he wouldn't debate again, and that he was uncertain if he would debate again, while Harris said that she was more than ready. And that's really interesting because on the surface it sounds like Harris wants to debate, Trump doesn't. And I think that if you dig a little bit deeper, what you'll see, though, is that Trump sort of was willing to debate, but on a network that was favorable to him. The only network that I think that would have been acceptable for his purposes would have been Fox.
Yeah.
Then immediately afterwards, on an interview with Fox and Friends, he told them that he wasn't willing to go to a debate if it was hosted by Bret Baier or Martha MacCallum. He wanted someone like Sean Hannity or Jesse Waters, and of course Harris was never going to do that. So I think that Harris might be a little bit less than genuine in her acceptance of another debate. I think she knows that Trump would put so many conditions on it that it would be unacceptable to her. And then I think that Trump, his unwillingness thus far, unless his conditions are met, I think that's a way for him of politely declining. That's sort of the behind the scenes look that I can see as of right now.
Looking at the debate, let's talk about the third person in the room, which was actually the third and fourth persons in the room, and that is the moderators from ABC. Were they fair? Do you think that they came in to the debate as moderators with clean hands and they left with equally clean hands? Or do you think they sullied themselves a little bit, knowing that all of their friends in the press would never hold them accountable for anything they did or did not do?
Look, Pat, I try to defend the Fourth Estate when I can, and I was really excited for this debate because I like David Muir. I think that he, as a journalist during the 6 o'clock hour, he's a straight newsman, but this wasn't that. This was probably one of the worst debates that I've seen in a long time. And it wasn't because they fact-checked Donald Trump. It was because they didn't fact-check Harris.
Right.
And, the questions themselves seemed to focus more on his time in office than hers. At the halfway point in this debate, it was difficult to determine who was actually the incumbent. And in fact, that was Vice President Harris, not former President Trump.
Right.
That said, I have no patience whatsoever for the complaints from the Trump campaign when they bellyache about how it was a 3-on-1 debate, because Republicans have been complaining about a biased press for as long as I've been alive. And, perhaps they should have put some stock in the Boy Scout motto and been prepared and expected that, David Muir and Lindsey Davis, would also be, more aggressive and press their case against him, rather than just calling a fair contest. So, yes, I think they did themselves and my industry a disservice. But, I'm not too sympathetic to Donald Trump, because he had to know that the press would, be unfair, because he says all the time that the press is exactly that.
Right. No, it should not have come as a surprise to anybody about how that played out. Did she, in your view, and this is just you, did you think that she played out much better than you thought she would? Did she actually overperform in this debate?
So when I spoke to former Vice President Pence before the debate, because he's one of the few Republicans who's had a national stage with her, and he was, at least, in my analysis, I think he was dead on. He said that she's a formidable debater, that she's poised, but that she can't or won't defend her record.
Right.
What we saw, if you look at the first question of that night, she was asked, I think, a fair question, which was, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? That's a standard issue question about the economy.
Yep, Ronald Reagan.
She dodged it.
Yep.
She dodged it. But throughout the rest of the night, rather than, interacting with the questions themselves, I think that Harris was very smart and very capable in putting Donald Trump on the defensive at every moment. She needled him on the money that he inherited from his father. She goaded him on the fact that, she has big crowds as well, and that maybe people are bored at his crowds and they're leaving early from his rallies. She made certain that they had a long, extended debate about January 6th. So she was poised and she was formidable, and I think that she did a pretty good job, not of defending her record, but of running away from it.
Do you think, first of all, you probably don't think there's going to be another debate, right?
Yeah, I think that both sides are posturing right now, but I think it's unlikely that they sit down.
Yeah. If you were, and I'm going to give you a job change. Are you ready? I'm hereby give you, I was going to say, I'm going to give you a new position, higher ranking. Let's just do this. Let me say that as of Monday, you're going to be the new campaign manager for Trump. What would be your position if he would listen to you? And that's an if. But if you walked into his office down in Mar-a-Lago and you said, Mr. Trump, we've got, X number of weeks left. This is what we need to do. What would you lay out? What would be the three things that you think Donald Trump would be better off if he did it that he's not been doing?
Well, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris would be in a lot of trouble if I was anywhere near, the office of campaign manager. I don't know how to run a campaign, but I have talked to a lot of people who are in that position and have given advice to Donald Trump, and they see it as sort of a fruitless endeavor because they wanted him to tie Harris to the failures of the Biden administration. That was job number one. In fact, that's how Republicans defined success. And yet, throughout that night, he was the one who was either unable or unwilling to do that because he decided to get distracted by a lot of these fights that, frankly, have nothing to do with the quality of life of the American people. I mean, Pat, Donald Trump arguing over the inheritance that his father left him has nothing to do with the price of gas today. And the same thing with whether or not people are leaving his rallies bored, right? She was able to distract him pretty easily. So, there are a lot of folks who want him to follow a more, conditional or, conventional path. And there are a lot of folks who right now are frankly upset with him because he didn't debate prep. He sat around and talked about a lot of different policies with Representative Matt Gaetz and former Representative Tulsi Gabbard. They sort of peppered him with some questions, but he did not do conventional debate planning, and he allowed himself to be distracted, and that may very well be his last debate. And so, in a neck-and-neck race like this, maybe this thing ends up being determinative and not in his favor.
If you were his campaign manager right now, or you were Donald Trump Jr., okay, when you look at this debate that now is 4 days old, when you look at where the momentum still is, are you troubled?
So the Trump campaign, they put out some internal polling numbers, and you got to take those with a grain of salt because no campaign is going to put out numbers that aren't favorable to themselves.
Right.
But according to their numbers, Trump stayed mostly where he was. They have him up 2 points according to their metrics. But I think what that tells you is within the margin of error, according to their internal numbers, he's still tied. And mostly, what that shows is they don't think it hurt him. They don't think it helped him either.
Yeah.
I think the race is where it was when it started. That might be the case, but if it comes down to another election where 100,000 people and a handful of battleground states are going to determine this thing, then sort of choosing not to debate and choosing not to make a change, that's quite the gamble.
No, it is quite the gamble, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it is that the campaign for Donald Trump continues to pivot. I found one of the things that I thought when I was sitting there, and for a while I shut off the audio to the debate and watched it. I didn't listen. I watched it. It was interesting that while she was speaking or while he was speaking, he basically continued to look straight forward to the people doing the moderating. Mm-hmm. She gave all of her attention to Trump, and I didn't hear a cackle, but that weird grimacing grin that she would do, and the finger to her lips and the hands to her chin, like I've got you now, buddy boy. I mean, it was kind of bizarre.
Yeah, and one thing that we know about Trump is that he understands the audience and he understands television and the power of its image, right? This is someone who is obsessed with the visual. I think that, Harris was also ready for that kind of challenge. And what she was telegraphing, with her facial expressions, and it's so smart of you to, have turned off the audio for a second. I wish I could have done that in the spin room. But I think that she was trying to telegraph just how bizarre, at least in her opinion, some of the things that he was saying were. For once, she was signaling that he wasn't the main character, mm-hmm. but that instead she found the things that he was saying unhinged. And you saw that with the raised eyebrows and the, like you said, the hand on her chin. I think it was, pretty strategic, and they got the images that they wanted out of it.
Yeah. And when I watched that, my thoughts were, as I watched it, because I'm a political animal by nature, but my thought was, I thought at about 15 minutes in that the needle started to move a little bit, that it was going from Donald toward her. Then at the end of the debate, I sat and I went back, and I've listened to most of it 3 times now. But as I've watched it, here's what I think. I think in 2 weeks, that debate will mean nothing. What will make the big difference is if she doesn't drop the ball and she takes whatever momentum was handed to her as she came off the stage and she continues to pound that and run with it, the better off she is. What I think is Donald needs to stop going after her and go after their record. She is part of the current administration. He needs to tie that down.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And the strange thing is his campaign has done that. And he's done that in interviews, right? He has talked nonstop about, how she owns the economic record of the Biden administration. What was surprising then was that he didn't make those arguments on stage. And to your point about Harris and momentum, I think that she's going to, basically build off of this, but continue to avoid interviews, continue to avoid the press. It hasn't hurt her before, so why would she stop now? And so long as Trump is sort of waffling on whether or not he'll actually debate her, she looks confident by saying that she's willing to do it again.
Yeah, well, and I think that's because she's like, this is the first time I've gotten momentum since I've been announced the candidate. I'm not sure how long it will last. So what I need to do is I need to keep jump-starting it. I need to keep re-revving it. And I think Donald Trump should just say, you know what, no more interviews, and then just leave it. Just absolutely leave it. And then go out and do what he does best. Go out and just hit the campaign trail again. Go out with one of his large rallies, which will be large and people will not be leaving. But to go out and to watch that and to just keep hitting that and to stop going after her on personality and strictly go after her on record. She did this, she said that, she didn't do this, she said that, and just keep hammering, and then look directly at the press and say, okay, I've made up the questions for you. Are you guys going to take it to her or not?
Yeah, and that was one thing that throughout the night was interesting. Trump was almost begging the moderators to ask Harris some more difficult questions. At one point, when they were debating abortion, Trump asked, well, are you okay with abortion in the 8th or the 9th month? I think he even said to the moderators, you should ask her that.
Yeah.
They didn't. But, there are opportunities to draw out the contrast. And if it's not going to be on a debate stage, then it's possible for him to do that, in the press by raising these questions.
Well, I told somebody that I was texting while the debate was going on, and I said, somebody's trying to go after the Candy Crowley Award. When she was the moderator back for, a network back against Romney and sorry, my brain just took a hike, Obama and Romney, and she basically slapped Romney down and bolstered up Obama and bailed him out of a tough place on the stage, totally violating the thing that she had signed in her agreement as to what she would do on stage as the moderator. We're giving, I think, my view, we're giving too much leeway to the moderators. We're bowing down to them too much, and all we're doing is enhancing their bottom line.
Yeah, and look, as a journalist, you have to decide what is the nature of your interview, what are the parameters of the debate. And during a one-on-one interview, sometimes it is absolutely necessary to fact-check a politician in real time because they lie. I mean, that's their nature. But by offering these fact checks and also sometimes getting them wrong, I think that the moderators definitely stepped into the lane of Candy Crowley rather than the path that was blazed by Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. We came out of Atlanta, having learned something about Biden, having learned something about Trump, not because they only told the truth on stage, but because the moderators did their job such that they gave both candidates opportunities to disagree with one another. And later there was a fact check. Later, journalists could sort of dissect what was said and what wasn't said. By trying to do that in the moment, I think at one point David Muir even fact-checked Donald Trump on whether or not he had been sarcastic when he was talking about the previous election. That's kind of dubious in my mind.
Yeah.
By doing it in the moment, they stepped into the ring themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's exactly what they did. And I'm just going to tell you right now, if you're going to fact check people in the media, whether or not they've been dubious, you're going to have an awfully long follow-up on what goes on there. Philip, I appreciate you being here today. Let me ask you, do you have any idea right now, because I know how these things change like the sand in the wind, any idea what this coming week brings the campaigns and where it puts you?
Yeah, so I think that one thing that's going to happen behind the scenes is you're going to see, Governor Walz and Senator J.D. Vance. They're going to run tape on that debate, and they're going to be taking quite a few notes because in October, on October 1st, those guys are going to share a debate stage, and I think that we'll get a pretty substantive policy exchange between the two of them. We'll get a good idea of sort of the competing visions of both campaigns. They may end up having the last word So I think both of them are preparing for a future debate that they've already agreed to. And in the meantime, throw a dart at the board because there are 7 swing states that both of these campaigns are going to be parachuting into, between now in November and now the next time we speak. So I think that, they're going to be, in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Georgia, and elsewhere.
Yeah. There's a lot out there for grabs. And you just mentioned some key states. They're not going to be coming to Indiana. First of all, we're beyond red. And secondly, we only have 9 electoral votes, so it doesn't matter. Those other states are huge, absolutely huge. And you're going to see a lot of activity there. Philip, next week we'll do it again. I appreciate you very much, sir. You're the highlight of the week on the Pat Miller program.
Thank you, sir.
Talk to you soon. And welcome back to our last half hour on this Saturday. Very glad that you guys are with us. Hey, real quick, just a short story, and then I need to take a quick break. Boeing, the 33,000 production workers at Boeing voted overwhelmingly to go on strike yesterday, with over 90% of the members rejecting the company's proposal of a 25% wage hike over 4 years. Are you making 25% more than you were 4 years ago? I'm not talking about if you change jobs or positions. Within your company doing the same job, are you making over 25% more? I bet you're not. This is quite a blow to Kelly Ortberg, who's the new CEO at Boeing, and it's kind of the last thing that they need. They've had some problems. Their proposed pay hike fell below the 40% production workers called for, and the union had recommended workers accept the deal. In announcing the results, however, the union characterized the work stoppage as an unfair labor strike, citing alleged safety violations on the production floor. No, this is just people in a union trying to take the people that pay them dues to stand there and fight for them and trying to bend them around to their own positions to do what they can do for themselves within the union. Coming up straight ahead, a little bit more on what happened in the debate, and we're going to talk about it. And what happened after the debate? Some numbers happened between Trump and Harris. What happened? We'll talk about all that. Thanks for being here. Looking for your emails, Pat Miller, all one word, no dots or dashes, patmiller@wowo.com. Thank you for being with us. So let's have some more discussion here about things coming out since the debate. Some people, for example, the Commission on Presidential Debates, the co-chair, said the ABC moderators bent over backwards, in other words, to help Ms. Harris. And they said, worst we've seen in 30 years. 30 years. Commission on Presidential Debates co-founder and the co-chair, Frank Fahrenkopf Jr., who also was chair of the RNC, stated after the Wednesday debacle that was a follow-up to the Tuesday debate on Newsmax TV, The Record, and he said, look, the performance by moderators David Muir and Lindsay Davis was, quote, the worst performance I've ever seen, and they were clearly oversized, I think, on the way they treated former President Trump and bent over backwards to help 2024 Democrat presidential candidate, Vice President Kamala Harris. Well, now, I think that that's something that's worth looking at. There are some reasons to say, why did things go this way? Why were they given this kind of leadway? Somebody needs to take the moderators to task. There are some moderators who have moderated for debates because they were chosen by their networks because they're part of their network stars. But they're not necessarily doing a great job for the people of the United States. Fahrenkopf said, I thought one of the things that shocked me on the debate night was the way the moderators handled it. We always explain to our moderators, and we've done 33 of those, starting back in 1988, that their job is to be facilitators. They're not to get involved themselves. Do you remember Candy Crowley at CNN? Do you remember that mess? Where Donald Trump, sorry, not Donald Trump, but Mitt Romney, there's a mistake I won't make again. Mitt Romney said something about Barack Obama and something that he said and did not say about an event that occurred. And Obama said, no, I never, and he goes, are you sure? And Candy Crowley, who was the moderator, said, Mr. Romney, I think that the president is accurate in what he said, so let's move on. And he looked at her like he was stunned. absolutely stunned. And he went on and tried to finish the debate. Candy Crowley's sitting there, with her nose in the air, and I've got all this figured out, and I know what's happening, and I know what's going on. 2 days later comes out and says, I made a mistake. What I said was not accurate. But see, even that misses the point. Even if what she said was accurate, it's not the place of the moderator to straighten it out. That's not what they've done. They're not supposed to get involved. It's different than if you had like somebody on your program and you asked them a question and they answered it in a different way than they said the month before. You can correct them. You come on my program, I'll correct you. But if I'm moderating a debate, not so much. Moderators aren't supposed to do that. A debate is not between candidates and the moderators. It's between the candidates. And these moderators, from all I could tell, it was a horrible performance. And I've said, and Mr. Fahrenkopf said that he's done over 33 of these things. He goes, I don't know what their thoughts were. But they were clearly oversized, I think, on the way they treated the former president and the way they treated the president, vice president. I think they bent over backwards to help her. Well, another article that crossed my mind from the Wall Street Journal right after the debate, and it said that Trump tops Kamala Harris after the debate in Michigan. Former President Donald Trump right now has the edge over Vice President Kamala Harris in Michigan after the debate on Tuesday. Now, that's an insider advantage poll, which is a rather reputable poll. The poll was conducted on Wednesday and part of Thursday, and it finds that 49% of the likely voter respondents back Trump, while 48% back Harris. You say, well, yeah, that's only a 1-point lead. In Michigan, Republicans aren't supposed to win Michigan. That's a Democrat stronghold. I think what's going on is I think a lot of people up there in Michigan, car manufacturers, people that manufacture parts that get delivered to car manufacturers, I think they're looking at all this and they're going, what have the Democrats been doing for us? They're not helping us. What's going on with this? Why do we tolerate this? Why do we put up with this? And I think that's a valid question. I think it's something that they need to ask themselves. Why are we tolerating this? And I would ask that question as well. It's a 3-point swing away from Harris and toward Trump since an August Inside Advantage Trafalgar Group poll. And that survey from August 6 to 8 found that Harris was leading 49 to 47%, but now Trump was leading 49 to 48. That's a 3-point swing. It appears, they said, that the debate had little or no impact on the contest, particularly among independent voters in this particular state. And that's something you got to look at. That is something you have to look at. Look, was this a victory for Kamala Harris, this debate? Yeah, she did pretty well for Kamala Harris. It's one thing to put on a theatrical performance. It's another thing to come out with stuff. And as one person said in their article that I read, it said a decisive but shallow debate win for Harris. Her lack of substance will not escape the voters' notice. He lost. She won. Full stop. In 3 weeks, folks, and I'm not just trying to say this because I like Trump and I like Republicans. I'm saying this because there is no way this makes any difference whatsoever. Absolutely no difference whatsoever. That's the part we need to come up. Don't make this bigger than it is. The two major headlines. First, Ms. Harris showed what she needed to show, that she is tough enough, bright enough, and quick enough. People hadn't really seen her tested, but she had been elevated with mysterious speed in the drama that came out with the facts of getting Joe Biden off the stage and then everybody to the left, including the media, running in behind her to buttress her up. And that's kind of important. It's one thing to be able to stand there and to do it, and she did that, but did she present herself as a plausible president? Yes. Did she present herself as a possible productive president? No. The incapacity of Mr. Trump, he was famously unable to portray her as outside the mainstream. But the news is he didn't seem to try. And I'm not sure why. I don't totally understand it. I don't know if he has something else up his sleeve. He couldn't prosecute his case because his sentences collapsed. He leaves words out. He'll refer to he and them, and you're not sure who he's talking about. This is typical Trump, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that sometimes it's hard to follow him. We talked to her about word salad, and he's got his own version of it. Well, word salad can be cool. It can be fun when you're getting applause and you're out there at your rallies. This doesn't work on a debate stage. It is strange that he didn't know this. And here's the news. In the past, it was possible to think he might have made more sense the next time, but I don't think he can do better than this. Back with more straight ahead. Glad you're with us here on the Pat Miller Program, here on this Saturday on WOWO 92.3 FM, 1190 AM. The closing segment of the program, and just very glad again that you're with us on this Saturday. I know there's a lot going on. Kids are back in school. You're chasing ball teams, high schools on Friday night, colleges on Saturday, church picnics. I get all of it. I'm just glad that somewhere, either live from noon to 2, or as you listen again on a podcast, and you can always find the podcast, just go to wowo.com and you click on programs, click on the Pat Miller Program, and then you can click each one of the segments. Hour 1 and Hour 2 for this week will be the two at the top. Last week will be the next one, the week before that, so on and so forth. Here's the thing. If you miss some of it, you can always go back and hear it again. If you've heard it, but you want to hear it again because you think maybe you missed something, or maybe you're playing it for that fishing friend of yours, and you go, hey, as long as we're right here on the boat doing nothing, let me get my phone and let me let you hear what it is that Miller said yesterday. Whenever it is, I'm just glad to tell you that it's always there. And if you want to respond, you can do that. Pat Miller, all one word, no dots or dashes, Pat Miller at wowo.com. Now, I'm not really trying to tell the two moderators there for the news system that was taking care of the debate, as it were, the other day. But let me help them out a little bit. Just a little bit. I want to set the record straight here. Kamala Harris got away with, I would say, several whoppers Tuesday night. They were all deplorable, but the lies and the partial truths regarding her position on fracking plays a big, crucial role in the swing state of Pennsylvania. Let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. This is Kamala Harris talking. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. Yeah, 3 of them. Woo! Let me say this. It's kind of a dodge and weave when you've got a sitting vice president and they say to you, I've never banned fracking. I didn't ban fracking as vice president. You can't ban fracking as a vice president. You don't have that power. Just like you can't do an executive order as a vice president. To sit there and say, I never banned fracking as vice president. So? You didn't sign anything to say you were for it either. You can't make judicial moves. You can't make legislative atonements. You can't do any of it as Vice President of the United States. My position, she goes on, is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. Ms. Harris, look at the last year and a half of the Trump administration. That's what we were doing. The people that we became beholden to for energy were coming to us because they couldn't keep up with our own production. What are you thinking? What are you trying to pull off here? You can't do what you can't do. She said, my position is we got to get more diverse sources. Okay, you can put up all the solar panels and the wind vanes that you want. She said, we have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. Then why did you shut down Keystone Pipeline? Why did you and your president start banning fracking? Why did you do it? You almost drove Joe Manchin from your own party because what you were doing was so insane. Why did you do it? That's the question a lot of people are asking. Especially people in West Virginia and Pennsylvania, which, by the way, are states you kind of need. Look, take her falsehoods from the debate and let's cut them down into smaller chunks, shall we? She, Kamala Harris, asserts that in 2021, she made it clear she would never ban fracking, but that 2020 claim itself was a flip-flop from the position that she put out at a town hall meeting the previous year. In 2019, she unequivocally stated that she would ban fracking. But in 2020, once Joe Biden was backed into a corner and had to choose her as the only viable woman of color to be his running mate, Harris made clear that he would not ban fracking. The next part of her claim is a half-truth. She was indeed the deciding vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, much to her own shame and our impoverishment. However, she cannot take any credit for opening the new leases on fracking. The only reason that fracking was even included was because West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin made it a stipulation. He needed it for his agreeing to sign on with the Democrats to that misnamed boondoggle of a bit of legislation, the Inflation Reduction Act. Yeah, sure it was. As a matter of fact, the Biden-Harris administration has been trying to renege on its agreement regarding that particular write-in by Manchin, according to the Wall Street Journal. I don't know if they're going to pull that off. Mr. Manchin's provision prohibits the government from holding offshore wind sales unless it auctions off a certain amount of offshore area for oil and gas. The administration, the Biden administration, had canceled Mr. Trump's planned offshore oil and gas lease sales. Mr. Manchin's goal was to force the administration to open up more public area for drilling. Here you had a Democrat senator now pitted against a Democrat vice presidential administration, of which, by the way, Ms. Harris is the number 2. The administration's new 5-year offshore oil and price gas plan for 2024 through 2029, by the way, includes only 3 lease sales, which is the fewest in history. It's the bare minimum needed for Biden officials to achieve their offshore wind targets. Most 5-year plans have included 15 to 20 sales. They're offering 3. The Biden plan is not the Trump plan. The Trump plan, which is the one that the Biden officials revoked, they would have held 47. 47. 3 new leases are not much to brag about, especially considering that if Harris had her druthers, the number would be 0. Because you got to keep your friends from the squad who are on Congress, you got to keep them on your side. Lastly, her claim that we have the largest increase in domestic oil production in history is also inaccurate. The increase in oil production had nothing to do with Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, or their policies on fracking or lack thereof. They can say whatever they want. They've got an empty suit there, and this time the empty suit is being worn by one Kamala Harris. And they need to come to grips with that. I mean, they really do. And I don't know that they've done that. Let me do this. This is going to be kind of a shortened version, but let's go to a marching band update, as I want to do, and let you know how things are going. Last week was the first actual week of competition that's happened around the state of Indiana, and we will look at that because last week we had some programs going on that were at various contests around the state, and some of them involved some of our own bands from this area, and we told them that we would do that and get it in there and let them see what it is that's happened. In ISSMA Open Class, going on what happened, last week we had the Crimson Invitational for Goshen, and at that one from this area, we did have West Noble. They were there. We had the Pride of Portage Marching Band. We had the South Bend Adams, the Manchester Squire Band, terrific band, by the way. We had the Bremen Emerald Alliance, the Knox Redskin Brigade, the Jimtown Marching Jimmies, and the Whitco Marching Pride. Whitco is a band that's kind of up and coming in the area, and more power to them. In Class C, Wawasee Marching Warrior Pride, Northwood, we had Fairfield Marching Pride, and we also had John Glenn Falcon Pride. Fairfield, which is a great band, they came out with a 17.5 on their scoring, and then right ahead of them was Northwood with 69.950. In Class B, we had the Columbia Marching Eagles, we had the Concord Marching Kingsmen. They came in first. In second was the Northridge Raider Band, and then the Pride of Plymouth. Then you go up to the larger bands, and remember, in bands, it's not the size of the band, but it's the size of the school from which they come. But in that contest, in Class A, you had the Carroll Charger Pride winning that one at 7.3.650, right behind them. The Penn High School Marching Kingsmen at 7.3.150, and then the Chesterton Trojan Guard. So a lot of great close bands, and they were in there very, very closely. Give me a moment, if you would. Let me talk about next week, because next week is kind of a big deal for some bands in the area and for one band announcer, your humble host. One of them is at Carroll High School here in northwest Allen County, right out there on Carroll Road, the Carroll Challenge of Bands. And in that, I'm just going to give you some of them from the area. The Carroll Charger Pride, they're the hosts. The East Noble Marching Knights, the Fairfield Marching Pride, the Garrett Railroad Regiment, and man, have they come a long way in the last year or so. The Knox Redskin Brigade, the Northwood Red Regiment, the Northwood Big Orange Pride, the Snyder Mighty Marching Band, the Spirit of Woodman, and again, to top that all off, I will be out there doing the announcing for that contest, one of my favorite things to do all year long. My kids didn't go to Carroll. We were Snyder people, you know that. But let me just say this for the people out there at Carroll High School and their great director that they have out there, they know how to do a marching band contest. I mean, they genuinely truly do. And so I'm looking forward to being out there. If you have a chance, scream at me, holler at me, tell me hi. I love it because it's going to be a tremendous day. We'll start presenting bands somewhere around noon, and it will go until almost 10 o'clock at night. And it's just absolutely terrific. So thanks for being with us. I'll look for you next Saturday out at the marching band competition. But before that, I'll look for you at noon right here as we meet together here on the Pat Miller program. Make sure you write me, Pat Miller, all one word, no dots or dashes, Pat Miller at WOWO.com. Have a great weekend.
Podcasts by Federated Media.